let's talk about the history of Bumble Bash.
Okay. So I've been to everyone.
Really?
I don't think anyone else in this call. Well, I mean, obviously, there's no way that everyone in this call.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think I'm the only one in this call who has been to every Bumble Bash, which is not hard. It's only 50% of us.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, and I have worked every Bumble Bash as well, which is also how I've probably gained some reputation in that area.
Sure.
Of doing things.
Definitely.
All right. So why don't you tell me what you have heard about Bumble Bash? And we can.
That sounds amazing. I have been doing my homework a little bit.
I am looking at the sheet, and it is very well researched.
Well, thank you. Towards the beginning, for sure. I sort of ran out of time towards the end, but the what I've heard of Bumble Bash 1 was that it was kind of, the game was still in its infancy. It sort of everything kind of spawned out of these rivalries between Chicago, Portland, and New York. Dre, my understanding, is the first one that was kind of like, we need to go over there and settle this, and and that turned into Chicago numbers, and that turned into Coronation, and it kind of spun off all those. But as the scenes started to grow and new scenes were popping up, there was the Bumble Bash took notice. Nick and Josh decided to throw an event. That event was in Austin, Texas, at the convention center, the same time that the Big Buck Hunter World Championship was going on.
We had a couple players playing in both. So Drew would pop over, like Drew would play a set and then go pop over and shoot some buck and then come back.
Amazing. Is this Big Drew?
No, I mean, not Dotson.
That makes much more sense.
He is a big Drew.
He is a big Drew.
He is a big Drew, but he is not the big Drew.
Correct. Yeah. The big one though, like to me, the thing I think about when I think of that tournament is B-Bear Bandito. The B-Bear Bandito set is like the essence of KQ lore. It is
it is the you had to be there moment.
Yeah.
So this is when they first introduced bots, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like bots really hadn't been a thing. Friggin' Burton did not have a team going to this tournament.
Oh, man.
And
Portland or Phoenix's finest.
One of Phoenix's finest. And he, Austin, he unfortunately had to play the Austin team, so the hosting team. And 1v5 them and won.
Yeah. The footage is amazing. It's incredible.
He gets carried off in a crowd of, oh my god,
it's beautiful. I mean, to me, it's the heart and soul of like what I love about this game is that like the Phoenix scene has gone through so much. Jeff from now from Seattle, Obo was from Phoenix, moved off to Seattle. Turbo moved from Phoenix to New York. Sam moved from Phoenix to San Francisco. Like players bled off of that scene. Like Tyler Maloney made that scene, and even he eventually left for New York. Yeah. So there is a lot of like a sense in which Phoenix has weathered some tragedy. But the one thing they will always have is Burton's B-Bear Bandito. It's legend stuff. It's like it's never trusted juggler. It's the evidence that in this game, Burton doesn't really travel a ton. He's by modern standards, he is I'm sure a good player. He's on a Bumble Bash team. He's gonna. Oh, is he? Yeah. He got added. He got added to Mikio's team.
Oh, interesting.
And I honestly, pretty good pickup. he's going to be out of practice, but that's you never fully lose the skills. But like the one thing is that like there was that one glorious moment when the like stakes were at their highest, where he fucking 1v5'd the Austin team and knocked Austin out of relevance as a scene as a whole. Like that is incredible. Like
I don't know that I necessarily feel good about that. But I mean, on the other hand. It is the legacy, man.
It truly. Yeah. So that's the thinking about your legacy. That's the legacy.
That is legacy. I like to think there's a certain contingent of player who takes this game very seriously, right? Like the people who want a couple, two of them might be in this shot, but maybe. But the people who them, they're the ones who want to grub out the wins, the ones who will win at any cost, and there's certainly a place for them, right? Like there has to be for any competitive community. There will always be the people who like winning is everything. I think that they B-Bear Banditos sort of set a good precedent that there's room for the other teams, right? The Mimi teams, the like very silly ones.
Yeah.
Like the ones that like, I like from now on, right? I will never bring another team to Salt Lake other than one that rolls dice.
Amazing.
So, there's like, I like to think that legacy was set by him and that he like has created a room for silliness and fun and joy and just like random stuff to like happen. And it's like, what if we just threw these 5 players in a blender and see what happened? Sort of situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I know what you mean. About people who, all they want to do is win. I think that part of what I love about competitive environments is that it is a chance for you a consistent chance for you to reflect on how you approach competition. Because I do not think that there is a problem with being like, I am going to like absolutely try to do everything I can to win this tournament, but only if you understand that in the greater context of the sport, the game, you as a person, and to me, the heart and soul, the spirit of Bumble Bash is that like this is the time. If you are there throughout the year, there are going to be a ton of smaller tournaments. There's going to be a ton of tournaments that you're going to have to ask yourself, like, what am I willing to sacrifice in terms of time, in terms of like possibly relationships, in terms of this, that to win. But the answer is never to me as clear as it is for Bumble Bash, where it's just like treat it however you want, but the players that like are here to win, they're like, I am here to push myself to my limit. That's where they're like off the chain.
They're gonna go, yeah.
Yes.
And but there's also a I want to say there's a constraint to that as well.
Sure.
It's not just I want to win no matter what. It is I want to rep my scene.
Yeah.
I want my scene to be the best that it can be and show up and take whatever we can.
Yeah, right? Man. And that's the win for Phoenix. That is the win
for Phoenix right there.
Oh man, I'm so happy that exists in the tapestry of Bumble Bash.
KQ lore is dense and layered, many layered is what we'll say. About
like an onion,
like an onion. Yeah. But so what like. CB1 was not without its shank. So let's, we can talk a little bit about all the. So,
I mean, can we start with the game itself? Like, it is not the same game that we're playing now.
So we can start with the game. We can also start with the rule set because I think the rule set reflected sort of what what was in vogue at the time. So like the original rule set was written by a lawyer, a literal lawyer.
A KQ lawyer.
A KQ lawyer. Jeremy wrote the first rule set, right? Approved by a multi-scene team. Tiana was sort of mostly in charge of getting everything to work, but Jeremy was the one who wrote the rule set. And it had a couple different rules that were very odd on the face of it.
Mm-hmm.
So one of them involved this thing called a wrap glitch, which I don't think the vast majority of players know what that is anymore.
Not in the modern era.
Not in the modern era. So there was a bug in the game, right? If half of you was in the wrap and someone killed you or someone ran into you
from above or behind,
you would the player who ran into you would die.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the person who was behind you, dead. The person who was above you, above you, dead. And this is, this is because of, XY coordinates are hard, and they're not sprites are there are multiple sprites on screen and so on and so forth. And it's all a shell game when you look at game development. But the point is, this was purposely written into the rules that said if you exploited the wrap glitch, you would automatically lose the game.
Amazing. How did Lev react?
It was Josh B and Lev.
Oh, really?
But in one of our first tournament games, I believe it was against Phoenix, right?
Ooh. So Tyler Maloney and squad.
Jeremy flew through the wrap upwards, and Tyler dove on him, and Tyler lost the game. And it was deemed accidental, so we went with it, and I was on Jeremy's team and we were winning at the time, but it was hilarious because Jeremy had written the rule.
Oh, that stresses me out so much.
It was just one of the things where we just all looked at each other and sort of grimaced all at once. We're like,
yeah.
I mean, for it to happen to Tyler, of course, Tyler was like, oh, yeah, I mean, we were going to lose anyway, right? And this wasn't Jeremy's last life. Like, it was Tyler's last life. Mm-hmm. So, and we were ahead on Snail or Berries. I don't remember which. But, point is, it was not going in their favor. So Tyler was like, yeah, we're not gonna fight this, right?
Right. Part of that rule is there's a measure of intent or something.
Yeah, there's a measure of intent, right? It's like if you purposely just sit there in the wrap halfway through, that was the intent of it.
Yeah. Which people were doing, I'm sure. Again, I mentioned
people were certainly doing before the tournament.
Yes, right.
There was also the hive glitch. I think they patched it out right before the tournament.
Bears could go through the hive wall. Was that what that was?
People could go through that.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
If you ran it long enough, you would just port to the other hive, and it was just and obviously that was written into the rules. You weren't allowed to do that. But people were exploiting that so much.
My Lord.
Pre-BB1 KQ was wild.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
There was also a rule about coin tosses, right? And this one actually did get people angry.
Yeah.
So one of the things was in the case of a three-way tie, to say there wasn't a notion, we hadn't yet formed a national standard on a couple things, right? There was no national standard or consensus on map selection rules.
Mm-hmm.
There was
only one map for a while.
There was only one map for a while, and now there are two, right? And there wasn't a consensus on what to do in the case of ties, especially in groups, right? Groups was even a new thing, for the most part. Most of the tournaments that I'd been to, I'd only been to one other tournament that year, which was GDC, and a lot of tournaments still were just running a single double and bracket and been done with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the coin toss was created in the case of a 3-way tie, to break seating, right? And this got a firestorm.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Because people felt slighted for good reason, right? Like they didn't get to prove themselves. They had it's like, hey, I had a harder strength of schedule, and so on and so forth, right?
Yep.
And so that was a thing. And I believe that is one of the reasons why Jeremy decided to never write rules. We lost a good man that day.
I got out of law school, and that was fine, but the KQ community.
Oh, what else happened? This was on old hover, so not easy hover yet.
Right. Back when for anyone that is newer, that runs into the term 50-50.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is that? That's from this. There was no easy hover. The holding a ceiling was legitimately hard.
It was legitimately physically impossible for some people.
Yeah.
Like, certainly for me, I still cannot tap fast enough to hold the ceiling at that speed. Right. And you would sometimes just drop off the ceiling for no reason.
It was a 50-50 chance.
It was a 50-50 chance, which is why the people who were just 50-50ing forever were just running that tournament. And this led to our first ever KQ injury. Where BK strained his I believe it was his tricep.
Yeah. His tricep.
Yeah, and this
wasn't even like his carpal muscles or whatever.
No, it was. I believe it was a tricep. Maybe it was. I don't remember exactly which muscle it was. But the point is, it might have been a forearm. Anyway, point is, he injured his arm, and this was against Cobra Kauai, which is the SF team that took the highest placement for us. And his team had been slated to do really well that day, and that sort of ended with the arm injury because he couldn't 50 anymore.
Right.
So never a good way to go, right?
No.
And
this was happening everywhere too.
Yeah. And so this Chicago was the highest profile one. And Cobra Kauai went on to play FSU, and FSU took it in a long set. Oh my god, it was so long.
Man, I wish I was there. God, I love those long drawn out sets like that. To me, I have these fights with people. Some people are like, "Oh, famine," and I'm like, "No, I want this is part of it to me. This is the who can scrap, who's got the stamina."
Oh, right. This was prior to 90-second famine timers. So famines weren't terribly common yet, but they were starting to happen. They became a thing around the they came around the BB2 era of tournaments, right? That entire year of tournaments was just you could not do time estimates for tournaments. They would just completely freaking Cactus Clash 2 specifically. Was the longest tournament I think I've ever been to. It the final set wrapped up, and it was 2 a.m. and they shoved us out on the sidewalk, and we had the awards ceremony on the sidewalk in front of the bar.
That's the kind of stuff I love.
That was because of famine. It was all because of famine. They might have even added the timer. Yeah, they might have added the timer at that point. Because
really?
Yeah. But it was still that
for
bad.
the record, though, the first timer they added was 300 seconds long.
Yeah, it was pretty long.
Oh my lord! No, I believe it was literally. I think it was still 300 seconds at the very beginning of when I was playing, and my window into the realm of injury due to long play was the Bert. I'm sure you remember Bert. I'm not sure who in the modern era remembers, but Bert was a Chicago regular that was very talented. doesn't come out really anymore. Big sad for us. Always love playing with
He
Bert.
comes out every once in a while, right? I thought. Or is that a different
the last time a different Bert? I don't
There's
know
only
any
one
other
Bert.
Berts,
Okay,
but
there's only one Bert.
Yeah, our Bert. The last time it's been a long time now. We would love to have him back. Same with Chuck. I would really love for Chuck to come back. I think we're gonna find out in retelling Bumble Bash why Chicago has a long, really rough history. People sometimes maybe don't come back for good reasons. But
like we said, the layers of lore in Bumble.
It's so deep.
Killer Queen is ridiculous.
Yeah. But Bert's injury came from I really tried to hunt it down. I heard one thing from Josh Ecklow. I heard another thing from Nick. I've heard different times, but the highest, what I would say is a safe estimate of the length of the map that basically was like made Bert reassess how much he could play was there was a 20-minute night map that he just collapsed after. Like the highest estimate was like 25, but I think 20
there was a long night map at Coronation the year after Bumble Bash.
It was very well could be where it was.
I remember. I don't remember if you were there. Maybe you were. Maybe you weren't. But we were chanting "hydrate" at Wyatt because every time he needed to take a drink of water, we would just shout "hydrate, hydrate." It was because it was. I believe it was Damish, and I believe it was and maybe it was Sam at the time.
Yeah.
And it was just famine happened and it would not end. People were diving through the rap. It was going and going and going and same deal. 20 minutes of famine later. And it's 2 a.m. in New York City.
Yeah.
Which to be fair, if you're going to be 2 a.m. somewhere, it might as well be New York City.
Yeah, exactly. So not as much of a punishment as if it's 2 a.m. in San Francisco
or Phoenix.
Yeah. Oh Lord. Oh man.
So let's talk about so 16 teams in bracket. So you chased this one down.
I did.
So you had some notable ones. You had FSU. So we talked a little bit about them earlier.
And of the gatekeepers of the
upper levels. I agree with that. They had Big Drew, Marion, Tiana, Jabba, and maybe Anthony.
That I couldn't tell from the player cam because the player cams. And also, a really interesting thing, the production value swings between
the production value was two guys in a trench coat pretending to be a computer.
But the FSU team, my understanding is the core is Drew, Tiana, Jabba, and so if Marion was on that.
Oh no, it was Charles. Charles
was it Charles? Charles.
It was Charles.
Charles
was on that team.
Yes. Yeah. But that. So the interesting thing to me is lore head or history head or whatever is just that you see that team so early and they're that kind of figure, and then I have never met Jabba. And Charles, has taken somewhat of a casual role a little bit. I only say that in comparison and contrasting to Big Drew, who still comes out, and Marion, who still comes out, and Tiana, who has taken some time away, but really, really aggressively competitive players. But I think that I had a misconception for a while that FSU was kind of not taken seriously in New York when I was very specifically and pointedly corrected. Thank you to Soren that they were taken seriously, especially Big Drew, who has had a very important role in my KQ career. But that they were Drew is fucking terrifying, and obviously like Marion and Tiana, and like the squad was good. It was just that they were not the New York one, and they weren't really. My understanding is they weren't trying to be. They were more in a direction of Josh B, where they were like confident in their talents and willing to be like, all right, we're going to play with people that we like playing with, and we're going to put this squad together and like play together consistently and have fun with getting better instead of getting better at the cost of the fun of the game.
Yeah.
And
back in the day, this team was especially terrifying because of the tap rate of everyone on that team. Everyone on that team could hover. Like,
that's true.
That was like, again, this is pre everything. So being that sort of skill set was not easy to come by, right? Mm-hmm. So that was really important.
Yeah.
You have Day so from Chicago,
right? Well, I'm sorry. I let's talk about teamwork first.
Okay, you want
they
the
have
contrast.
A consistent name.
Okay.
No, I want to start with the names that we're gonna follow, and then we can follow the players. Mm-hmm. But teamwork. This was Domish, Turbo, Wilk, Wyatt, and Carissa. They were, my understanding, from what I've heard, especially from Wilk, who is living in Chicago now, one of my closest friends, is that was like one of the earliest attempts at just a consistent team. They were like, we are going to take this game seriously. And I think that it is well understood at the top level that part of being a consistently strong team is playing together with a consistent team that can learn to grow together and to know what to expect from each other. And this was the attempt. It was teamwork. The fucking proof is in the pudding, because they not only won this tournament, but like were a consistently dominant team in New York and nationally for, years.
Yeah, they won the next year too.
They did indeed. So yeah, we will see this team pop back up.
Yeah, they. I'd say this too. This was the this is the most interesting part, and this is why I will forever stand Domish as maybe the best queen who has ever played.
I hear that argument. I'm open to it.
I think obviously, like, people make a bunch of different arguments. Sure. Personally, Domish is one of my favorites, right? And it is because this was other than Turbo, this was mostly a new team, right? This wasn't like, I'm grabbing the like top talent from New York and I'm forming a team. This was I'm going to grow several players all at once. And it was you have Turbo, obviously, who was one of the best speed warriors of his era, still amazing player. You have Wilk, who was, I feel like, largely unknown at the time.
Yeah.
You had Wyatt, who also hadn't yet made the name for himself as the terrifying anchor warrior that he has become. And Carissa, who is probably the best drone of that time and maybe like several years after.
Yeah. I played with Wilk for 30, which we won. And I was very new at the time. And I was asking who I should watch to learn how to drone well. And Carissa was the one that Wilk always people pointed to. So even at 30, which was in early or mid 2019, she was still relevant as a source of drone skill.
I forgot that you had won a tournament that early.
You're goddamn right, I did, but not as queen.
So not as queen.
Counts.
I mean, it counts. Still. Look at the top level. Every player matters, and that is, I think, the most important thing to take away from this, from whatever podcast that we do with Chris. It's that every player matters on the best teams.
Absolutely. And every player can bring something to a team. I really want to hammer this home, because I don't think it's fully understood or accepted in the popular mindset. But like, you can look at a player. Sometimes you are looking at a player and thinking a certain thing about their skill level that is literally only because they keep getting asked to do things that they're not, their skill set doesn't naturally lend to. People play different roles. People play the same position in different ways that are both equally valid. So
yeah, it is what I'd say about that is, there's obviously a way to maximize talent, and Damish has done that consistently over the years. He has taken me and turned me into a striker somehow for the one tournament that I was one. And if you know about my play style, it is not suited for that at all.
I think you're adapting. You adapt to it better than you give yourself credit for.
Maybe a little bit, but I will, like, it is not my nature to be that sort of player, right? Yes. And Damish has been one of the queens who's been able to bring it out consistently.
Yeah. It just feels so natural with Damish.
There's like every oh my god.
Playing with a good queen makes you feel like 10 times better than you are. Yeah. Like it brings out the best.
It is incredible to play with Damish. Like he is one of my favorite people to play with.
Absolutely. No question.
Let's see. Who else? Day. So I believe Esparza was not on this team.
Is that right?
I think Esparza,
I had a lot of trouble with that player cam.
Because Esparza was queening the team with Christina.
Is that right?
Yeah, okay. And we actually correct. Or maybe he was, because no, Paul was queening the team with Christina. And maybe Esparza was on that team too. I don't remember.
Maybe I need to hunt down the details on that. We can edit this.
But he was playing with Megan and Dan.
Megan and Dan,
I do remember.
Yeah. This was like very early Dan Barron. Dan Barron was not. I mean, he'll always be Dan Barron in the way that like he's just like hacks and hacks and hacks at something that he doesn't understand until he fucking understands it. But you know,
so Dan has long been considered the best warrior of all time. Maybe,
yeah,
probably.
He's your favorite warrior's favorite warrior.
He's your favorite. He is certainly your favorite warrior's favorite warrior. And he has certainly evolved over time. Yes. But even back then, like you know, what I heard from Eric, who had just moved from Chicago, was that he wanted to play like Dan Barron. I talked to Tiana. Oh, I learned from Dan Barron. It's like, oh, okay. So this guy right here. And, you know, he's not like one of those players who like, you know, was early on very relevant and then dropped off. He is still relevant to this day.
Absolutely.
And that is incredible.
Like just 140. I mean, I would say that they are the favorite to win.
I think so. He won 40. He has
1BB4, 135, 130,
135. Like he has found, you know, he's found a groove. He knows where he's at. He loves to win, from what I understand about him.
Very true.
But like he does it and like is very zen about the whole thing.
Yes.
So like I appreciate that about him. Even when, you know, I think in Dallas, we were playing, and Belia was pointing out. She was like, "Dan's angry." I was like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah,
like he won't show it, but he's angry right now. Like he's angry that you guys beat him. I was like, "Oh,
sure."
Yeah.
I mean, losing always stings.
Losing
should always sting. It's not like the goal is to take that pain and make something valuable out of it. It's not to not feel that. So I've always held a ton of respect for Dan in a million ways, but that's a large one. It's like he feels that same strong feeling about losing that I do, but nobody's ever accused him of being the toxic asshole that some people have gotten a name for.
Yep. No, that's true.
Yeah. So this is definitely the early days of Dan Barron, and Dre
Dre.
has all like. I mean, he's just a name that you're gonna see pop up a ton.
The legend himself.
Absolutely,
one of
question.
My really good friends.
Yeah.
Dre.
And the person who is kind of spurring on a lot of the competitive spirit in KQ at this time. I mean, I mentioned it briefly, but like the first KQ tournament happened because essentially word got out that they have a cabinet in Portland, like they think they're good at the game, and Dre was like, no, fuck that. Look, we're going over there.
Let's go beat him up. That is classic Dre in my mind. Let's go beat him.
I mean, think about how hard it is to like convince somebody that they should travel halfway across the country now, like to play this game, like when the game is established. And he was doing that back when it was like 10 people playing this game. Like
Dre, if you ever have the opportunity to meet Dre, he is
technical difficulties.
If you ever have the opportunity to meet Dre, he is one of the most wonderful, charismatic. Yeah, he is. Personality is larger than life. Wonderfully charismatic. Can make you do things that you didn't think you could do.
It's so valuable, dude.
He's a legend for a reason. He is absolutely one of the best players. Yeah. He did win BB4 as one of the Warriors.
Yeah.
He's largely dropped off from the scene, unfortunately. But he is currently very happy where he is, and that is all we can hope for him.
Absolutely. And it's just I was talking about legacy. Yeah. Like Dre's legacy is impossible to untwist from the legacy of KQ as a whole. Yes. Like he is one of maybe the most like
one. Yeah, maybe he is one at the highest stage. He has, evangelized the game to people. He has convinced that the community is worth it. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like that's the miracle work right there.
Can't really say more about that than that.
Yeah. So next we have another. So we got to talk about them together, right? Because the hot dogs is Cesar's team. The young buck in Chicago at the time. That
is wild to me that Cesar was ever okay. So this is wild to me. Like 6 years, I don't remember how long ago. Like I played on a team with Cesar in, I want to say 2018 is my guess. 2017 maybe. I don't remember. Right.
Okay.
This was one of the first. At the time I'd been mostly playing with San Francisco players, and I decided to branch out a bit and Cesar was one of the first people to be like, yo, you want to be on a team with me? I'm like, yeah, I'd love to play with Cesar. Cesar's amazing. I love Cesar. I think this was after BB3. I asked him how old he was at the time. He's like 25. I was like, are you serious?
Fuck right off. Yeah.
Oh my God.
It was amazing going back and seeing him in the player cam. Just a much younger him.
Yeah. Cesar is what can you say about Cesar?
Wunderkind. That was
he was a wonderkind at the time.
Yeah. If you're gonna compare, maybe Dre to Sam Beckman, although the timeline on that is slightly off. But if you're gonna compare New York and Chicago, one of the easiest ones to draw is it's actually probably Sam to Cesar.
Yeah.
Is these like kids who came like second generation to Killer Queen. The game had already been established somewhat, and they came in and they were just like, oh, this is how you play?
and then just beat everyone.
Yeah. He was. Yeah,
Cesar is incredibly impressive. He has been incredibly impressive for a long, long time. Yep. And you'll see these with these teams that have been here for a long time, right? He mentored Walshy
He invented the Walshy. It's crazy.
He invented the Walshy. He is also Walshy's son, which is incredible.
And somehow simultaneneously his father.
There's simultaneously his father.
Paradox going on there.
It's like that Heinlein short story, all of you zombies or something like that. Anyway, no,
but
Cesar,
he's got a thing named after him. Like, for the record, if I don't know if you're watching this and you don't know what a Cesar shuffle is, or a Walshy, depending on where you're from, it is when you are running away from a queen, or you are dancing with a queen, and then you turn right as the other queen is turning, and she is like not stopped all of her momentum, and her butt slides back into you, and you kill her. That was very novel at the time, and also very relevant. And that was Cesar had his name on that. That's wild. That's some legacy shit.
That is legacy right there. Yeah. And so Cesar is obviously the inventor of the Cesar shuffle, or the Walshy, depending on which one you want. Garzon also been playing for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Off and on player who has he's been a part of the scene. He's not been a part of the scene. Right. He's been back in the scene.
Yeah, he's been coming back out recently, by the way. I want to give some mad shout outs to Garzon, because he's like, okay, I want to come back and I want to take some stuff seriously. And he's been putting in a lot of work. It's showing.
That's good for him. Like, I love that about like Garzon is always he's a character when you meet him.
Yeah.
He's like, you will, there's always a bit. Sometimes you don't know if the bit's real.
Oh, that's Chicago, baby.
That's the Chicago bit right there.
Chicago bitism.
We got Cads.
Yeah.
Also been a long-time player. We got Aaron Goldberg.
That's another name that'll come up.
Yep, he will come up a lot. He's also very excellent. Also has a lot of accolades behind his name. And we have Dylan Conrad.
Yeah, that's another name.
That is another name that will come up.
Yeah. Foundational in Chicago. Has moved away to Charlotte. Yeah, to Charlotte to be with Mandela Axe.
Yeah. Are they playing again or no?
I don't imagine. It could be, but I don't think so. I haven't seen them in a very long time. I always love when I get to, but they also, for the record, left Chicago before I got from the game. So did Dylan come back to play for 40? I don't remember. I feel like he came back to play for 35. Yes, he did come back for 35. I don't think he came back for 40.
Okay.
But, one of those, like, honestly, your favorite queen's favorite queen once upon a time. Like,
once upon a time. Well, we're about to get to the favorite queen's favorite queen.
Well, yeah, that's true. Oh, my God. Very true.
All right.
The Portland team? We've talked about Chicago. We've talked about New York.
Let's get to Portland.
Yeah.
The big five.
Yes.
The ones who are still, to this day, some of the most terrifying players you will ever meet.
Absolutely. Hall of Famers, all of them.
Hall of Famers. We got Cody, your favorite queen's favorite queen.
That one actually is true. He was doing some shit that people weren't even ready to see. Yeah. Like, they didn't even get.
Like, I think personally, right? Like, you ask anyone who the best queen ever was, and probably everyone. Okay, maybe not like maybe not now, right? But like years ago.
Oh, right? There was a time for sure.
There was a time when everyone's number one answer was Cody.
Everybody wanted to be Cody.
Everyone wanted to be Cody. Incredible player. Like, does things that still to this day I don't think people have replicated. To the degree that he did.
And then that whole team was a package deal for a long time, like a dynasty team, legacy team.
Matt and Neil.
Yeah, Matt and Neil. And Logan. They are frequently a trio. It's not that Lev isn't part of that, but they are, like, even after Lev left, they played together a lot. They really liked to play together.
They really love to play together. And they are playing together again at Bumble.
Yes.
Well, minus Logan. Matt and Neil.
See, this is the thing, is that at some point Logan stopped coming out, and that's fine.
And so did Cody, which is very sad.
That's the hard one.
Yeah. Matt and Neil, though, they stopped coming out for a bit, and they are back. Yeah. And they are as terrifying as ever.
This is true. I will say really early. Oh,
a little different in the context. Like when I first met them, right? They came down to GDC and destroyed us.
Yeah.
Like not even like there wasn't
down
even
from
like,
their mountain too.
Yeah,
they crushed the puny humans.
They also destroyed our scene. So thank you, Matt, Neil, and Logan.
Really early on, sorry, just real quick about Neil. Both of them, but Neil specifically, I knew by name way before I ever met him or even knew what he looked like. Because Dan, when I was asking about really early relevant players, Dan was talking about how like Neil was just like a lot, like one of the scariest warriors. It was a person that a lot of people modeled their play after because he was or tried to, at least, because he was he was the opposite of everything New York at the time. He was bing bongy, he was bouncing off ceilings, he was trying to get you to fight him, like he was just, but he would do it so well. Like he was jumping up and down when he knew he could, and then he was stable when he knew he had to be. Like that was big.
He I believe is the inspiration for a lot of the PDX players. So like you ask Asher who he modeled his play after, he says Neil.
Yeah.
Like you see Nick Higgins doing things now and you are like, oh, that's Neil, right?
Yeah.
Like all of these players who, have made names for themselves since Matt and Neil left. Like you go back and you trace a lot of the lineage back to Neil.
Absolutely.
Matt,
for the record, not to sleep on either Logan or Lev. Matt also plays a little bit of that aggressive.
He's much more measured, I think.
Yeah,
and you kind of need that sort of measured play when you're playing with someone who is like Neil.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, this is what I was saying is that you got like you have to have a balanced team, but the balance is like if you've got that one hyper aggressive player, you need somebody whose job is to create an environment where that can happen. And that's largely, I was going to point to Logan, but I think that there's an interesting little gradient here from like Neil being hyper aggressive and, to like Matt and then to like Logan, who is just like very consistently like, I think a very objective focused from the few times that I've played with him and very good at being that kind of stable boy.
Yeah. So back then, Lev was
warrior, not
but back then Lev was he running drone for that team? I don't
know, honestly. I forgot to like watch specifically for that. I can't imagine actually Logan might have been the drone on that.
Yeah. I mean Lev is, if you have never met Lev, you should definitely meet Lev. He was very much the nicest Portland boy that they're all amazingly lovely people. The thing is, Lev is much easier to introduce yourself to and to talk to right off the bat is what I'd say about that.
Sure.
He's very approachable person. And he moved to
Madison.
The Midwest, Madison. Madison for a while.
Big part of my early experience, for the record, was going up and having our like little sister scene that was A, showing me the ropes, and B, nice about it. Lev and Jen. Great. Yeah.
And Jen used to live in San Francisco. And
really?
Lev would come down. Yeah. And she never played the game back then.
Yeah. I had no idea.
I am upset. To say the least. But anyway, Lev, because she could have reeled Lev in and been here. And okay. Anyway, point is, Lev, in like one of your, like, if your favorite ledge had a favorite ledge who wasn't Wyatt, it was Lev.
God, I have so much respect for it. He's an incredible Lev, and also for the record, the shit that I was talking about, the rap glitch, is the embodiment of Lev to me. Which is
Lev and Josh B are like clones of each other. Sometimes it's like, oh my god,
truly. Like Lev is the kind of person that like everything I heard was like, he's like, well, if it's in the game, it's fair game. I'm gonna do it and I'm gonna take advantage. He's the kind of person who will sit with a berry on a spawning drone and just kill them over and over and over and over. because it's optimal.
Hey, I mean, it is. It's true. That is. We call it the Steve.
Yeah, amazing. But I have a lot of like respect for it. Like I think that it's not for trash games. I think it's a little disrespectful for trash games, maybe, or it's more just
spawn killing drones is always for trash games. Let's be real.
It defeats the point of trash games, though. Like you're trying to.
No. You leave the berry there, and you just kill the drone over and over again, and then you clip it, and you laugh.
All right. For the clip bank,
For the clip. It's got to be for the clip.
Like that approach to the game where it's like, hey, if I'm not doing everything I can to gain an advantage, then I'm not trying to win. And if I'm not trying to win, then I'm kind of letting my team down.
Right?
Yeah. Like there's a very real part of me that has that in me. And Lev is the epitome to me of that without turning into a kind of monster that's like, doing that and then talking shit or something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that whole team as a team, by the way, is going to come up again. Like
that.
That's,
they come up a lot.
Yeah.
And they're here again.
Yeah. If teamwork is core New York, and Chicago's got a smattering in there, but the core of Portland is that Cody, Matt, Neil, Lev, Logan, and so
so we end this section on BB1 with Cobra Kauai, who is the San Francisco, I won't say homegrown because we had a little help here. We had Eric and Rachel from Chicago.
Yes.
Who moved to San Francisco. And they were part of the initial GDC issue, shall we say, because they were, they brought in their game from Chicago and they were really good. So Josh B, who, if you've never met Josh B, you should meet Josh B. Josh B is a wonderful person, still one of the best queens in the country, even after so he's taken a bit of a step back, I'd say. He doesn't necessarily want to be the best anymore. At the very least, he doesn't feel the need to win and prove himself in the same way that he did back in the early days.
Very fair. He's done a lot of winning. So
he's done a lot of winning, and he is he's so good at the game. Josh, still one of the greatest players in my mind who has ever played the game. Eric and Rachel. Eric, I will always have a soft spot for Eric and Rachel. Some of my best friends, because they taught me how to play the game. Taught me how to warrior. Right.
Yeah. Fosterers of the San Francisco scene for sure.
They Sean Kelly, who doesn't really come out too often anymore, but is sort of the embodiment of the primal gremlin energy that has carried on in San Francisco's playstyle.
Hell yeah.
He was the progenitor of it, I'd say. Him and Thor, who was also on this team. Primal gremlins.
Yes, I know only of them from Reputation and Legend, but that's what I've heard.
If I had to put a spirit on San Francisco play, it is that gremlin energy that you see with Brian M or Sam or Matt Wu or
Cave Dweller, Barry Smushing motherfuckers. Damn.
If they're not doing something weird or hilarious, they're not having fun with the game. And Sean Kelly was that most of all. Let's see. Well, so we can talk a little bit about winners. So FSU,
I wrote down some upsets, or what I would say are upsets by modern standards.
Yes. Maybe. Yeah. So you have FSU knocking Dre into losers. So that was unusual, I think.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You mentioned that Cody knocked Cesar into losers. And then Cesar knocks out Dre in the semis.
This sets the stage for some things that come later at BB2 and BB3.
I think BB3.
BB3 is the big one.
Yeah, BB3 specifically.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And then excuses resets Twerk.
Mm-hmm.
And then Twerk takes it in the reset 4-1.
Yes. I'm curious, since you were around for this.
Yes.
To me, like in the hindsight, like Twerk is dominant force, in this era. But this is the beginning of their legacy. Yeah. Was it surprising at the time?
This is hard to say, right? Because it's like at the time, the national community was not nearly as connected as it is now.
Discord.
Like we have Slack. Like the history. There's like no chat history.
Awful. I hated Slack so much.
It was a rough time in terms of national unity, right? Like people still had like scenes were still pretty siloed. Like it was. I don't think there were many mixing teams, if at all, at Bumble Bash, right? Like that hadn't even become a concept yet.
Yeah. I'm
sure there were, but
I talked about how like if like a lot of teams are formed based on who's comfortable with who, but at the time, like it wasn't just who's comfortable with who. You maybe didn't even know these people's names. Yeah. Like you maybe had seen them play once at the tournament you went to like 3 months before, and that was the only time you had seen them. Like
it was very tribal back then. We didn't know each other. And then we had a giant house party after BB1 and we all got to know each other.
Let's go.
And it was so there are memes from that day that we will still use to this day. So if you ever hear anyone shushing you and then someone yelling, "Shut the fuck up," and that the police are coming, this is from that party. But yeah, like, so, back before BB1, right? If you asked people who what the biggest rivalry in KQ was nationally, they would tell you Chicago versus Chicago.
Oh no.
And if you asked who the second biggest rivalry in KQ was, it was Chicago versus Chicago. BB1 was around the time when Chicago had finally started to find like some sort of unity, right? In their community, which was interesting, right? Like we have a rosy view of what that history looked like. It was very fraught back then. Like inner scene rivalries dominated more than outer scene rivalries because we barely knew the other people. So BB2 comes around, and this is different, right? Because like mixing teams start becoming a thing.
You suddenly know somebody from Coronation, or you know how they play from whatever Portland was doing.
Yeah, GDC2 had a lot of mixing teams come, right? We had like some Chicago Portland hybrid. I don't remember who it was. Like it might have been Chicago, New York. Esparza, who had been queening for BB1, was playing Warrior for GDC2. So like it's a very interesting world at the time, right? We weren't sure what was happening exactly.
Yeah.
And
also new scenes.
Tons of new scenes. So they announced that Minneapolis was hosting BB2 at the tail end of BB1. So Minneapolis was just starting as a scene back then.
Interesting.
And with Minneapolis came Charlotte. So back in the day for BB1, right? The big scene, like we had the big three, obviously. We had Chicago, New York, and Portland.
Portland.
San Francisco had just started. and Columbus had just started.
Yes, which that's a whole
that's a whole thing.
Early Columbus was something.
Early Columbus. Well, at the very
least, ask Craig about it. Craig loves to be asked by people he doesn't know about the history of Columbus. So just really get in his DMs.
Really ask him. Like really talk to him about it. I'm sure he will be happy. And Austin. Like those were the scenes. I think Minneapolis also like had just started, right? So they announced that BB2 was happening in Minneapolis the next year. And so during that period of time, Minneapolis grew like mad. They became so good. They were the biggest scene for a little bit.
Yeah.
And there are people, and Charlotte too. They also became very big. I don't remember if Florida had formed yet at the time.
I don't think so. I think Florida is relatively new. Florida might have been post BB3 or like around that time.
Maybe.
But the Minneapolis, the legend or the what was known about Minneapolis was that they had 60 people at their league nights every week. That was
like they have some of them are still there. Some of them are gone. Most notably, there was a Chris Baldwin who is maybe no longer with us. I am not sure. We have Napalm and Michelle.
For the record, I'm sorry. I do know Chris Baldwin is not dead. He is alive and he has a kid.
Oh, he has a kid?
He's a kid, dude.
Oh my God. Okay, I did not know that about Chris
Any
Baldwin.
hopes of getting him back out were kind of...
no, it's over.
Napalm and Bombshell.
Napalm and Bombshell. Is that what we're calling Michelle now? Bombshell?
She puts that as her.
Michelle
Lutz is the...
I do not remember when she started doing that.
But this was the beginning or the near beginning of Toxic.
Yes.
The team with some consistency and some reputation.
Toxic has become its own brand, and it is a fun brand. It is not toxic at all, which is a misnomer for it. I don't know. Anyway, point is, they give out hats. It's really nice.
If you're on a Toxic team, meaning you're on a team with Napalm and Michelle, you will get a hat.
You will get a hat.
It's really cool. Fun. Just got mine recently.
Hey, let's go. But this was a time. This was a big change, right? Like we had, some really interesting teams go to BB1, and they were hoping to get, higher placements in BB2, and a lot of them were shocked that they did not.
The number of teams, the golf, what it meant to get to the top 8, just like was
balloons
bigger.
I think there were like 20-ish teams at BB1.
Yeah,
maybe 20, maybe 24. I don't remember. It was big, right? It was not small.
BB2.
53. I don't remember.
53 was my count. So there was a wild card bracket, and a 20-team double elimination bracket, and I went and I compared which teams were like duplicates, so like which ones made it out of wild card, and I counted 4 teams. So 53 minus 4, plus 20. No, sorry. There was that's not 16. Right. Right. It was 37. There were 37 people in the wild bracket.
37 teams in the wild card.
And then 4 of those teams carried over to the 20-team DE bracket.
This is the beginning of my tradition for several years of getting kicked into wild card and then battling my way out.
Hell yeah.
It happened 3 times in I don't know if that's a record at all, but it certainly was. It certainly
feels like one.
It feels like one. I don't know if it's a good record, mind you, but you know what? I wear it with pride.
People have strong feelings about wildcard brackets, but I will say it's really hard to deny the hype of getting out of a wildcard bracket.
Yeah, no, definitely. It definitely feels kind of bad to be in the wildcard bracket and lose, but to get out of it is elating. It is incredible. So this was a very interesting one, right? So like so I played a I don't remember what their team name was. But Jay Sisk and Ryan Pollock had a
Minnesota team.
Had a BB2 team, right? Minnesota. Oh, and this is a fun story. So probably the week before BB2, I was in an Uber in San Francisco, Uber X. And at the time it was Share, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I get in the car and this older lady gets in the car as well, right? And I'm telling her about, how we get to talking, and she's like, oh, I'm from Minnesota, and so on and so forth. And she's like, oh, I have a son about your age. I was like, oh, cool. Like, and we get on about it. And she's like, oh yeah, he's about to play in this like video game tournament in like a week. I'm like, oh, that's really funny. I'm about to go to Minnesota to play in a video game tournament. She's like, what's the name of the game? Is it Killer Bee? I was like, yes, it's Killer Bee. And like, I was like, what's your son's name? And she's like, Ryan. And so like, I look at the team sheet and I look through I looked through everything, right? And I'm like, there's one Ryan from Minnesota on the team sheet, and I message him. I'm like, hey, I think I met your mom in an Uber. He thought I was talking shit, which is totally fair in retrospect.
Look, at the time.
But I was like, yeah, I think I like met your mom in like San Francisco in an Uber, like, and we we're talking about like how I was coming to BB2 and like hope like. And lo and behold, in group stage, we are playing against each other.
Oh, no.
And, he was super nice over DMs. And we, like, have formed a lasting friendship over the whole situation because it's hilarious.
It's amazing.
There's a long tradition, right, of me playing Ryan and now specifically Jay Sisk in a tournament group stage, and his team beating our team in a head-to-head. But through shenanigans and tournament play, somehow my team ends up either outplacing him or higher in the group stage for some reason.
Right, yes.
Like, it's just
through technicalities.
Some very odd situations happen. And so this happened at BB2. Our team got kicked into wildcard. And we got out of wildcard. And the team name was Blouses. So it was me, Steve, Cindy, who is now in Tennessee, and I forget our fourth player at the time.
Same.
But we end up placing higher than them. They were probably the second best Minnesota team. However, the third best Minnesota team, Minnesota Mean.
Oh, yes.
Nick Larson, Dan, Joe Miller, Drew, Jesse Sorensen, who unfortunately I know none of these people.
Oh, you don't know Dan and Joe Miller?
No, I don't. I don't think I do.
They were the nicest dads I ever met through KQ. I think only one of them's a dad, but they were big travelers when I first
Big
started.
Dad Energy? Is that
huge dad energy?
That should be a team name. Big Dad
Huge
Energy. Minnesota Mean made a dream run through the bracket that day, and they did incredibly well.
Amazing.
Yeah. FSU came up again. My wife, a Dre team with Ling Ling, who another foundational Ling Ling was on that first BB1 team with Dre, I think.
Was she?
No, she was with Paul.
Okay, all right.
Okay, because I remember that was one of the few times I actually beat her in bracket.
I see. Yes. Well, it very rarely happened again
very
because
rarely happened because she is one of the greatest players. Like if you're like, she is your femme Speed Warriors favorite Speed Warrior.
Yeah, absolutely. She's. I mean, like,
probably a lot of your non-femme players' favorite Speed.
No, absolutely. Like, yeah, she is legend status of the game. It's pretty hard not to know her name.
Yeah.
But if you're new, maybe you don't, and you should because she's fucking scary.
She's so good at this game.
Yeah. Yeah. So nice, so sweet, like loveliest person, and then destroys you on the cab. Yeah.
And then laugh about it. And you will not be angry about it either. Rishi
was
on this team.
Yeah.
Another legend, I believe.
Recurring name for sure.
He was on your 30 team, right?
He was the one that won? Yes, he was.
Megan was on this team again. And Spencer, who I don't really recall.
Spencer, old Chicago player, moved to Boston and has, in the past year, moved back. And is now playing in Chicago again.
Hey, let's go.
Yes. Very, very exciting. Another bald Chicago player. We now have 4.
You can form. You could do the bald team with just Chicagoans and challenge someone else. We could have a full bald tournament.
I'm just waiting, dude. We could do that. Invitation only.
I need to wear a bald cap or something.
Yeah, we keep talking about pitching in to get a bald cap, but
all right. Who else? Yeah. Okay, so this was also Pigeon Rats. So this was another longtime New York players. We had Moose, Richard, Marion, Anthony, and Mad Dog. All names who you will hear again
for sure. Yeah.
And
they are not New York one, but they are the epitome of a team that will beat whatever other scene's one team.
Yes.
As long as they're not Portland or Chicago. Like, they are just really fucking good.
I thought Daphne was on this team.
I think Daphne is traditionally.
Yes, right. But that is true.
Pigeon Rats is one of those teams that had some recurrence and went through a couple minor changes. But Daphne is indeed typically on this team, but this iteration was this. And you know how I know that this iteration is this team is because this is the first Bumble Bash with like team like what do you call it? Player placards and stuff. Like a screen at the beginning of the set that says who's on each team. Production value
skyrocketed during this tournament.
Oh yeah. You notably better.
This one had a Dylan Conrad team as queen. He had started. I feel like he'd started queening like around the time of like Chicago. Like I went to the Chicago that year. I forget what it was. Was it 25? Maybe it was 20.
It has to have been 20. No, yeah, because 25 was right before 30. But I don't remember. For the record, the name of the team is Spyglass. That was Dylan Conrad queening, Dan Barron, Aaron Goldberg, Cads, Josh Ecklow, all staples of Chicago. I thought that Dylan Conrad had been queening from before that. I think he was one of the mainstay queens for a while, but I don't know.
It was one of the first occurrences I'd seen him queening.
Fair enough. So definitely on a big stage,
right?
Yeah.
And then let's talk about the New York teams that weren't Torque.
Sure. Yeah. Sam is notable.
Yep.
For a couple of reasons.
So we have the team of Sam Beckman, who is, your second gen New York queen, who is widely considered one of the greatest queens. Austin Waters, who will come up time and time again.
Oh yeah.
One of your Vanilla Warrior's favorite Vanilla Warrior, if you're not named Hell,
or Wyatt
Wyatt and Hell, Wyatt, Hell, Austin are the favorite Vanillas. Rob
Newhouse
is now in San Francisco.
Truly, yes.
Love it.
The first person that took drone so seriously that they were gonna study it and lab it out and get it down to a science.
Like Carissa might have been the best at the time, but Rob quickly became very, very good next to her.
Took the scientific screws to the role of drone.
Yeah.
And then got very opinionated on it and loud.
Yes,
but
he
like,
did. And then he became
not a bad thing. People needed to know.
Yep. No, people needed to know how important drones were at the time.
Yeah. But all three of those names will pop up again, and all three of those names carry into the modern era.
Yep.
So,
and then they had Andre and Jason, maybe. Yeah. We're not sure.
I don't know those people. No, I know that's their names. I just don't know who they are.
I vaguely remember Jason. Yeah. I also remember he was in a tragic skydiving accident.
What?
that he did not die in that accident, thankfully. He just got grievously injured and could not play for some time.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he was in a skydiving accident.
What the fuck? Pour one out? Damn, okay.
Yeah, but he was really good back then. He was a Google player as well.
Oh,
as
yeah. That was the other thing I remember them saying on commentary was that this was a Google squad. This is the beginning of people, it being known that Google had cabinets in their headquarters in major cities, and that we were starting to get runoff or maybe overflow from the Google headquarters. Crystal Booth is easily the most notable Chicago player like that.
And missing from this list of players is Soren.
Was Soren on this team?
They were. I don't think they were on this team. They were on a different team.
Really?
I don't recall, but notably a Google player, right? They came from Google.
I see. Yes.
And I don't remember if they were at BB2.
Gotcha.
Then there was Mad Lads.
Yes.
This is a mixing team. One of the few mixing teams to do super well at this tournament.
A little bit of a proof of concept thing.
Yep. I think they were one of the pioneers of it. They had B Wong, who you will hear about more. BK, who we talked about a little bit from BB1.
Yeah.
Garzon, also BB1 era player. Lev, who is now in Madison. And Ben Mills, who is now in LA, I believe.
Yeah.
I don't think he plays the game anymore.
Three representation from each of the big three cities. If you count Lev for Portland.
He still counts as Portland at the time. So that was a mixing team concept that quickly, like, it sort of opened the door to this idea like that we talked about earlier. It's like you can add 10 out of 10 players on a team, and maybe it'll just kind of work out. And for them it did, right?
Yes.
And then at the end, right, we have
the
Portland team and Twerk.
Yes.
Who returners.
Yeah.
And we had
the Portland team making one important switch out though, for the record. Gross, whatever, is that Portland team from the previous year minus Lev plus Javen.
Yes, who is someone else you will hear about a lot.
Oh, sure. Yes, very big presence in Portland.
And then there are some other names that you will hear. Shipwash, Aaron Tran, Jordan from Charlotte.
All these people, yes.
Chaco and Chris Baldwin from Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Chris Baldwin, who is now a father, apparently. Sedab's Free. The San Francisco new squad. So Josh was doing it back in the day too. Andrew Dotson was at the time not new anymore. So he was the main warrior on that squad, but you had Scott up and coming. And Scott made his debut in a big way that tournament. They won a huge set against Spyglass.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
and Andy was on this team. Andy made her debut as well at BB2. And I believe she was grown at the time. And after this tournament, she's like, I want to be a queen.
Hell yes. Let's go.
Let's go.
So much power. How could you resist? But these names all are like relevant players coming up through the years.
Yeah. They will all continue on. Most of them anyway.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, Twerk wins it again.
Twerk wins it again. New York, all of the drama, 53 teams, and Twerk wins it again.
Yeah. All right. Well, they figured it out. They figured out their formula. For the record, it is more proof of something that New York had been putting down for a while, which was that Snail was really strong. The success of Twerk is also tied to the success of, or the proliferation of this understanding that Snail is the way to win Killer Queen.
Snail and military.
Snail and military. Yes. Yes, exactly. But that Berries is outmoded. And
sort of.
Yeah. Well, that was the prevailing logic prevailing at the time, largely because of Twerk.
Yes.
They were like, there wasn't really an analysis of like, well, where is mill just more, is it your mill that's winning, or is it the Snail that's winning? Like, if you had taken that mill and put it towards Berries, would you be winning on Berries? But the understanding in New York and was that Snail was stronger because also people were only running Berries as 2/2 Berries, and the teams that only had 2 warriors, I mean, still now, like, largely you're kind of getting run over. If your plan is to only be at 2 warriors, then you lack significantly in warrior strength. But Twerk wins. Twerk reasserts this narrative that New York is the powerhouse and that Snail is the way to win Killer Queen.
Yep. And so now it comes to BB3.
Yeah.
PDX.
For the
ground
record,
control.
A couple other things about BB2 is that there was the Minneapolis wild losers run, but the other, my wife is Dre's team. First time playing with Helen, establishing Rishi and Megan is or establishing Dre, Helen, Rishi, or Dre, Helen, Megan is regularly playing together, and also the Chicago rise. Chicago is still relevant. They get second place. It becomes kind of a New York Chicago rivalry. Portland gets third, but that's Dre cements himself as very relevant to the modern meta.
He becomes at the time everyone had sort of he had the reputation of being one of the best queens, right? Yeah. And this was his time to sort of cement that legacy. Yeah. He behind the maybe he's the best queen. You stamp the accolade on it. It's okay, now we know. Now we understand how important he is to this game.
Yes, right, big time. So BB3,
BB3 rolls
comes
around.
to Portland.
Oh, BB3.
Tell it.
BB3 was growing pains tournament, is what I will say. Right.
Yeah.
There were a lot of production issues with the tournament itself, and one of them, unfortunately, was this thing that you will hear a lot called Glancegate. I guess we call it. I guess we added a gate to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's I've heard it. It's you don't even need to have a name for it.
Basically,
if you saw it,
if you've heard of the glancing controversy, right? It is when glancing, first of all, is it is a mechanical problem with Semetsu sticks specifically. Yes. It is because when you are pushing on the stick and you release it, the tension in the spring might snap it all the way back and nudge the other leaf, which registers as an input to turn around.
Yes.
And this still happens to this day with cabs. It is not a solved issue. But we have written it into the rules where it is not an acceptable playback option.
Yeah. But another part of this whole narrative coming up all the way through BB3 is this unmentioned but very much known at the time issue of like cab consistencies and cabs, being made that were not playing like other cabs, and cabs being made with, different sticks or different buttons, different.
There was certainly a lack of standardization around cab hardware. And also there was the problem of cab hardware where you just could not rely on a screen to show you what was actually happening.
Yeah. All of these little things that were building up and came to a head at BB3.
Yeah. And unfortunately, BB3 has gotten the reputation of a tainted tournament, but it was like outside of the issues, which were myriad. Yes. It was a fun tournament. I had a lot of
fun. So I had been playing for 1 month at the time, and I was sitting on JD's couch watching with Katie Rhodes and Rob Hornstra, a bunch of other Chicago players, having an absolute blast. These are the hypest games of the year. Like it is the peak of, Bumble Bash, like mania, really. And just all of these teams now with years of experience under their belt and coordinated play, testing their abilities against the best from every other scene. And you get to see new people popping up. This is the first time you see, no, that's not true. Jordan Navarro, Queen's a team. Charlotte,
a Charlotte run was incredible. That wasn't Chipwash. Chipwash also had a good run in this tournament.
Yeah, but names start to pop up that are like, where did you come from? Yeah. Like it is going from, I know everybody if only by name, or like I am confident that I know the good players across the country, to people are getting good.
Who are these people? Walshy makes his debut in this. Walshy, Rob makes Rob has won a lot of tournaments starting this year, and he as Queen, and he makes his debut as a BB Queen, right? Let's see. Who else made there? This was Damish had moved to Portland.
Yes.
So there was a hole.
Yes.
Team Break was a team that formed during this time from New York. And they were the first team to say, what if we just made this into an esport?
Yeah.
Right. And they had consistently played across multiple tournaments. They had done well, but not like they'd won a lot of their tournaments that year, right? And they were the first team to play very consistently across.
Well, there's still teamwork,
right? Yeah, there was teamwork
was doing that,
but they weren't doing the same thing that Team Break was trying to do at the time. I think I make the distinction slightly. They didn't have a great tournament day, but. And it comes down to another New York Chicago another New York Chicago grand finals, and this time.
But the important really quick. The important thing we talked about, glancing and what it is, but the important one.
Oh, did we not talk about Glancegate?
No, we didn't. We didn't really talk about losers.
Winners finals. Over it a bit.
Winners finals. No, we got to talk about it. Kids got to know. Kids got to know.
Kids got to know.
Winners finals is the kind of the epitome of Chicago v. Chicago rivalry. It is the strongest teams maybe Chicago's ever had all in one place. Both coming up against each other, to fighting for the right to fight New York.
Young Nucks has made like a this isn't losers. because
winners. I'm almost positive.
Because Young Nucks played us and knocked us out.
But if they knocked you out, then this has to be winners because they knocked you out of losers.
Yes, they knocked us out of losers. But this happened way late into the tournament, right? Young Nucks versus Mind Freak.
Yeah.
Because Young Nucks had like gone down to losers early.
Yeah.
Much earlier than they intended, and had like a miracle run through
right. That was part of it too, is that they were
ascending, right? They were ascending, like they had the momentum behind them.
Yes, that was the most losers run momentum I've ever seen.
And they were up against like one of the strongest Dre teams that has ever been put together. He had Ling Ling and Dan and Megan and Rishi.
Yep.
And then the glance happened.
Yeah. There was each of them took a map, and then Young Nucks went up.
Yep.
And then game 4, the one that was like the deal breaker.
Yep.
And it comes down. Dre is on last life. Cesar kills him. They step away from the cab, and Dre calls over a TO and says that the stick was glancing, which if you go back and watch, this is where all of the trouble comes from.
Yes.
If you go back and watch, it's pretty clear that it was a glance.
Like, it was a glancy stick. There was no question about it. Like it was bad. It was just and you could tell that the final kill was glance, right?
Yes.
It was like
very clearly, obviously.
It was very clear and obvious that it was a glance. But
all of the menace and all of the like venom at the time comes from this narrative of like, well, everybody knew the whole tournament that was like, you knew when you stepped up. Like this problem with not having consistent cabs was like that they created this separation of like, no, you just got to deal with it, or like, no, that's bullshit. Like you're not. It's
the other issue was there was no consistent guidance for the TOs.
Right. Like what do you do
when this happens?
Yes.
And Blake Blake was the TO at the time. It's hard. I don't know what I would have done, right, is what I'll say to that. Because it is a hard call to make at the time.
But what they did do.
So they called for a replay.
They did a replay of
replay of the game
on day map, which was known as Dre's best map.
Yep. And Dre took it and then took the next one.
Yep.
And that is, but even as he won, right, it demoralized the squad so much.
There was also further. Oh, sorry.
It was demoralizing for everyone, right?
Yeah.
Who was watching the tournament, who was in the tournament. You could feel the air kind of like get sucked out of the room for the whole thing.
Yeah.
And, they went up against Clean. And, Clean just kind of won because I don't think anyone's heart was in it at that point.
No. There was also an hour-long break to determine what to do about the glancing stick and what was the proper way to handle that situation, and was it glancing and this and that.
So it's an important tournament for a number of reasons, right? It is a growing pains tournament. Like we had to standardize on we had to set standards on what an acceptable cab was. Right. And like it definitely was painful for Chicago specifically, who had to do a lot of healing after that.
Years of animosity between people, and
that kind of like split open again. And it's hard to like, and Bumble Bear themselves, like decided at that point that they would take a more, because up until that point, like the Bumble Bashes had been sort of a community run event, right? Where the hosting scene would basically throw a major. And Bumble Bear decided after that it would become their thing more, right? Yes, they would still rely on community volunteers, but more and more they needed to like take control of what became Bumble Bash.
Yeah.
So BB4.
Yeah. That the big jump, like maybe the biggest jump in any of these tournaments is the decision, okay, we're standardizing everything after BB3. And we arrive at BB4, Chattanooga.
And it is the best run tournament probably of all time.
Yeah. None of these glancing issues. No.
16 cabs, some ridiculous number of cabs.
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure it was 16. They were everywhere.
60 teams across like 2 venues.
To this day, the highest watermark for attendance.
It had like, there's definitely not so much, like we can't really name a lot of the teams because there's so many.
True.
A lot of the teams are back though. We have the
still
players
see,
that
Sam. You still see New York's Sam, B-Wong,
this time Sam has brought B-Wong, Soren, and Prashant.
And one other person, I can't remember who it is. I'm sorry to leave them out, but
is it Carissa again?
No.
Is it Rob?
It wasn't Carissa.
No, it wasn't Rob. Rob was cool.
No. Was it Chris Pratt? Was it Austin?
No.
Might have been Austin.
Might have been Austin. No, I don't remember who the last person. Unfortunate. We're sorry.
That was the big.
Sam comes back to defend his title. That's the big thing. But there's a new player in town. So Woody, who is a player who will probably be some people's opinions on the best queen of all time.
That's me.
This is Ian, right? This is Ian right here. She comes in. She's been playing for a long time and she's been winning a lot, right? But like her BB was not, her BB3 was not amazing.
Correct.
But the year after, she had been winning pretty much everything at that point, right? And so she might just be the greatest player of all time.
Yeah, definitely the most studious.
Yes, certainly the most studious. Plays very well with Dan Barron. Very good friends with Dre. Gets Ling Ling and Nikki on board.
Yeah. This team is really notable to me for the Woody Dan, Ling Ling Dre merger, because Ling Ling and Dre were like a known, packaged kind of deal for all of the big tournaments, and Woody and Dan had been spending the year really practicing hard. Yeah, absolutely.
And Nikki is we claim him as well in San Francisco. The Nikki Ian combo. Nikki is a little older than you are in KQ, I think.
Definitely
a little older, but he was not a, I wouldn't say he's like, he's not a Garzon, he's not a Esparza, he's not a Christina, he's not a lot of like these older players who you've heard about. So he's like sort of a new name on the scene, even though like he's an incredible player.
Yes.
Right.
Not an unknown quantity level of new, but new compared to the old guard, who are starting to now be like titans of the game for years, like known
quantities. He is the lone unknown name.
Fairly,
in Knee Howdy versus 60%.
Correct. But works very well with Woody and Dan.
Works very well with them. Then there is Cody, Matt, and Neil, and Logan, and Lev regroup together. The Booper Sonics come back. Walshy, Kevin, Gab, Paul, and Tressa.
I believe it's Paul and Tressa. It's
definitely Tressa.
Yeah,
it's definitely Tressa. I don't remember if it was Paul or not.
Paul had moved to, I believe, SF by this point, or Seattle.
Yeah, Paul's in Seattle at this point. And they had played at Cactus Clash 2 and won that one.
Right. Yes.
SF Secret. So this is the first time in a while that I didn't end up playing with, and this is the generational trauma that I was talking about a little bit earlier, with Josh B, right? And Jeremy. Jeremy's, retired and had a kid. Josh wanted to put together a team. And this is sort of when I knew the generation had turned, right? At this moment where we had Josh, we had D-Ray, who is still new to me, right? Even though he'd been playing for several years at that point and become this incredible warrior. You have Steve, who's always been there. So I'd been playing with Steve and Josh for 3 years at that point, on Bumble Bash teams. And then we had Ryan. Ryan Piaget, who now a legend in his own right. And Dan, Big Dan. And this was Dan Shup. And this was one of the best teams that SF has ever sent to a tournament. And it definitely had some bugs. We hadn't yet figured out full flex to its entirety, and this was a full flex team. And so there were some bugs in that area. Namely, not enough objective pressure. And we know now how important that objective pressure is, right? Yeah. That is one of the things we learned about SF Secret.
Yeah. Well, you were right at the apex of your Speed Warrior dominance of the rise of your best Speed Warriors. And so when that happens in a scene, frequently I think the attitude is like, well, look at this hammer we got, this new hammer. Everything's a nail now.
We'll just put new hammers in. And so then there was so SF Secret happened. There was a Chaco team.
Yes.
With I believe Jay Sisk was in it as well.
Yeah, is that this Live Laugh Love team? Live Laugh Love tying Secret for 5th.
That was the Chaco team.
Minneapolis is best.
Yep. Chris Baldwin, Jay Sisk, Azul. I don't remember who the last one was.
Yeah,
unfortunately. Damish brought a team again.
Damish freshly in. Or not freshly in Portland, but he was in Portland. But
he was in BB3 the year before. Lil Chomp had knocked him out in the wild card, actually.
Right.
This year, Damish brought a team. I forget who was on it.
Yes, but they were up there. The old names, you don't lose your edge.
Wyatt was on 60%, right?
Wyatt was on put your hands in the air with BK. And the reason that I put that on there, I put that team on there, obviously it's a good team. It's New York. It's some form of New York in an era where they are still extremely strong and extremely relevant. But Wyatt is not playing on 60%.
Yes.
That is to me the most notable, it raises some question of I cannot really picture a New York team that is supposed to be the strongest New York team without Wyatt on it.
Wyatt, it is hard to imagine.
Yes,
it is
but it is also is maybe a little telling of things to come with some New York. You can only get so big as a city. Yes,
we will discuss at some point in the future. But in the meantime, 60 team tournament. It is hard to run this thing, as I recall. But it ran very smoothly.
Yeah.
but it also means that it is hard to remember the things that happened. There were so many things that happened.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about the grand finals because that's the most important thing, I think,
For sure.
that came out of BB4. And this cements Chicago on top for the first time in 4 years.
Yeah. We had won 30 previously. So the question was raised. But this was definitely the two most recent big tournaments where Chicago won.
And then we entered the pandemic era.
Yeah.
And then the game goes into hibernation. And now we come out of it, and we got some favorites for BB5.
Yeah.
I think we got Chicago, obviously. Marshall instead of Dre.
Right. Marshall is the most notable person to come essentially post-pandemic.
Yeah.
Powerhouse out of Chicago. Yep. My favorite teammate.
Probably one of the best Warriors in the modern era, I think.
Yeah.
And then DFW.
Yes.
Let's talk about Dallas.
There is no way of getting around talking about Dallas.
Yeah, they weren't. Yeah. So they'd been around, right? They were pre BB3. They were really strong, right? But they hadn't yet broken into.
No, pre BB4, right?
Sorry, pre BB4. They had been really strong, but they hadn't yet managed to break into the top of the top.
Right.
Yeah.
They were the young bucks. They were still
they were the young bucks.
We're sorting things out.
Yeah. But there's no getting around it. They are with the most recent tournament, they are they might even be the best scene, playing the best KQ that you've ever seen. They didn't take 40, right? But they didn't have Eduardo on that team.
They also, I mean, if you didn't watch 40, they knocked the Woody Dan Lingling team
into losers.
Woody Dan Lingling, Marshall, Nikki, possibly the strongest team that has been in one place. Like, they knocked them into losers. Chicago won that tournament, but they won it through losers. And there is still, I think, a sense of well, yes, but Marshall was queening, which Marshall's an amazing queen, but they're that core traditionally has Woody queening. There's the question of what would have happened, but there is no question that what Dallas did at 40 was monumental. It was game changing. It changed the meta.
Yes, it is. It's potentially right. Yeah. And this is difficult because I was like, I kind of want to see them win. I want to see.
Oh yeah.
I want to see someone new up there with Chicago and New York, right?
Absolutely. It is the first time that a team that is not Chicago or New York has been in contention for best.
And Portland,
of sense of best team. Yeah, Portland also is in there, especially because Portland very early on was the dominant force. But even after the tussles between New York and Chicago, Portland was the next contender, no question.
And now it's Dallas.
Yeah,
Dallas and Chicago.
It's an incredibly exciting time to be in KQ, and that's the question that will be answered at BB5.
Yes.
Was it a fluke? Can they push through? I'm really curious about what's going on in Dallas leading up to it, but they've got 2 weeks left.
Yep. Unless.
Oh, you think a dark horse?
Ian, you could win.
Oh, I mean, there's also that. Who, me? Little old me? No,
me?
Don't worry about me, man. Don't study my play at all. I'm
don't
just gonna be over here watching videos and things. Probably not even about Killer Queen.
Definitely not about Killer Queen. I mean, BB5 has a lot of interesting teams, right? So it's both Portland teams look terrifying. I doubt anyone really wants to run into us.
No.
Yeah.
This
no one wants to run into the freaking New York Buzzsaw either. It's like there are just a lot of teams that it's just like, I really don't. Can I just skip them, please?
Yes. This Drew squad with Connor and Walshy and Marion
the Drew
and
squad with Connor and Walshy gives me some fits. I'm just like, oh boy.
There's a lot of analysis to be done on this team sheet, but for sure, if we're talking about the movement from BB1 to this, it's going to be Chicago on top, Chicago defending the title, and all eyes are on Dallas.
All eyes are on Dallas.
I'm aware.
Yeah. I think all eyes on Dallas is the best way to put it. And
absolutely.
I hope they pull something off because they'll be exciting.
Me too. I'm always here for shakeups.
Yeah. And
go Chicago.
So we'll see if we do a part 2. We may or may not, because there's a lot of content we can fill about BB5.
Absolutely.
We will definitely be back after BB5.
Yes.
And maybe we'll even talk about MagFest or West Circuit if we're here for it.
Yes, absolutely. I would be more than thrilled to talk about those tournaments. They've got a lot of history there too.
They will be a lot of fun. All right. This is Felix and Ian signing off for now because Chris K is not here.
Yes. So long for all three of us.
All right.
Till next time.
Bye.